Jon Pyzel, welcome to the Boardroom Podcast. Good morning, buddy.
Good morning. How are you? What time is it? 11 there?
It's 11, yeah.
All right.
What kind of vitamins are you taking?
Oh, it's my wife is really I take a lot of different like mineral supplements and stuff, and I just whatever she gives me. It's a handful.
Yeah.
She's really interested in like mineral balancing and all these different things. Like she does stuff where you take a hair you get a hair sample and you get it analyzed, and
Cool.
then you can read that information and determine what you're missing or what you need or what you don't need and how things work together. And she's pretty smart, so
Wow.
pretty awesome. Yeah,
That's fascinating. And so do you have to take hair samples like monthly to determine if
you can do it one time or whatever. What she got interested in it's like some people will get their blood samples taken, and but a blood sample is like very like what's happening today right now in your body, whereas a hair sample is more of like a long-term view. And when she did mine the first time, it was radical because my mercury levels were just like off the charts from eating a lot of big fish throughout my life, and a lot of poke and like a lot of ahi.
Yeah.
And within 3 months, she got me on these different supplements, and my mercury levels were down by 50%
Wow.
in 3 months, which is pretty phenomenal.
And did you stop eating fish, or were you eating the same quantities of fish?
I lightened up a lot, but that stuff's more of like a cumulative thing. It's not like not like, oh, I stopped eating fish this week and now I don't have mercury.
Right.
So I think like there's a combination of things. Anyways,
Wow.
I'm done with the vitamins for today. She's out of town. I'm running out of vitamins.
Uh-oh.
Could be trouble.
What about the I'm drinking a cup of coffee right now. So what about your coffee intake? What's your caffeine intake like?
I do I have daily one coffee in the morning, one big cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And it is I'm super caffeine sensitive. I'm sugar and caffeine sensitive. Like I get real up from stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to limit myself to like one big cup of coffee a day. And then unbeknownst to me a while ago, my wife goes, hey, just so you know, for the last month, you've been drinking half calf.
Really?
She switched me to half calf coffee, because we grind our own coffee.
Yeah.
And so she was making these like half caffeinated, half decaf, and it's good. So I try to kind of keep it at that. Sometimes I have a little afternoon pick me up iced tea or coffee or something, but I get pretty jacked up on coffee.
Yeah.
My friends will all attest to that. Like I'm a coffee spaz.
Well, what about like the afternoon Monster or Red Bull thing, like that sugar drink? Will you go there at all?
No, never.
Yeah.
I hate that stuff. I'll have like an iced tea. It's probably like a mate or whatever, herba mate. I'll have one of those. If I have one of those, I get pretty jacked. Like I have like trouble sleeping.
Yeah,
right.
I found that too. What do you do when you wake up at 2 a.m? How do you get yourself back to sleep?
I read. I do that a lot. It's funny. I have kind of like, I go through stages where I wake up in the morning like that, and then I'll read for 15 or 20 minutes and fall asleep.
Well,
I go through stages where I do good. I'm just like good sleeper, no problem.
So what is it? Why do you think you wake up?
I don't know. I feel like it's usually when I have like a lot going on in my life, and then it's literally like subconsciously I'm like stressing, or maybe not stressing, but just like, oh, I got things I'm thinking about. It's not necessarily bad stuff.
Yeah.
But just like things,
Yeah.
I've got a few projects going on right now, so I'm like, I got a lot on my mind, I guess.
What do you got going on?
I'm just building like a little glass shop. It's really not that big a deal. But a small glass shop over here to start doing like more epoxy boards and some different stuff where we've done, we farm out all our glassing. We don't have our own in-house glassing anywhere.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time we've done that in a long time. And, but I'm kind of I took a building that was a roof and a slab, and there's no walls.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm building that. I'm not physically building it. I did some work already. I laid some tiles and some stuff.
Oh, rad.
Yeah, it's been
So that
fun.
is a big deal. That's a big deal for you. I mean,
Yeah, I'm excited.
why there's a little bit of, I don't want to say anxiety, but there's excitement.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Yeah, exactly. But I'm thinking like, what materials do I need to buy? What do these guys need? What time are they getting to work, or what's going on, or whatever.
Yeah.
But nothing bad.
No, that's all good. That sounds great. And what area of Oahu is that?
That is in Wailua, like right on the North Shore, just outside of Haleiwa, the Wailua Sugar Mill, where
Yeah.
like that's where our main factory is, or
Mhm.
our Hawaii-based factory. And
Yeah.
I've been in there for 10 years, 12 years or something, and so I just found another space right next to our shop. There's actually just this like literally a slab with like it was like a giant carport, basically like a 1,200 square foot carport with a bunch of crap that had been stored in it for like 20 years.
Mhm.
And talked to the landlords, and they're like, yeah, you can rent that. We'll clear it out for you, and then you just have to build everything.
Cool.
So yeah, it's exciting. 15-minute drive from my house.
Yeah. Are you living at
Nice.
Rocky?
Yeah, I'm looking at Rocky Rights right now out the window, actually.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, I'm stoked. We've been renting this little house at Rocky Point for like about 14 years now, and it's
So
pretty great.
are you just down from, if you're looking at Rocky Rights, you must be near the Jones's house.
Yeah, there are two houses. There are two houses towards Haleiwa from me.
Cool.
I'm 2 houses towards Sunset from them.
Right. So you can peek at the lefts too.
Yeah, I can see the lefts if I walk out on my little picnic table in my yard, and then I just look out my window. I can see the rights. It's actually like head high right now, a little bit overhead and glassy, and there's no one going right.
That sounds like fun, dude.
Yeah, there's been fun waves. We got like a little swell yesterday. It's beautiful. Good Sunday.
Speaking of this, the Wailua area and the surfboard manufacturing industry in on Oahu, what's sort of the state of the union, if you will, or how's business? How's business on the North Shore or on Oahu in general regarding surfboard building?
I think it's good for everyone. Like as far as I can see, like I said, I use like outside glassing. So we have like a couple different glass shops, just 2 shops that we work with mostly. Um, and those guys, when I walk in there, like one of the shops is right by mine.
Yeah.
And I walked in there the other day, and like they do a lot of our boards. They do 50% of our boards here on Oahu. And at the same time, I walked in, and like every single one of their laminating racks had somebody else's boards on it the other day when I walked in, which to me is like, that's a great sign. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
means like everyone's doing good, and everyone wants boards glassed, and they're not glassing my boards. That kind of sucks that day, but they assured me that the next day was going to be all my boards. But no, it's good. I think everyone's kind of doing as good as they've done from what I understand, and
Yeah.
on all accounts, so it's pretty epic.
Well, building out a new glassing facility like you're doing, it suggests that first you've got labor, you've got guys that can actually step in and start laminating for you,
Yeah.
which has been a situation here in California. There's been a real struggle to find labor. What's it like there?
For me, it's funny because over the years, I get a lot of people like messaging me or hitting me up asking for jobs, like, hey, and from around the world, like,
Mhm.
I'll get random, like a guy from France, like, hey, I'd love to come stay on the North Shore this winter and work. And I'm a good sander, I'm a good laminator or whatever. And I kind of just like, well, I can't really help you. I don't have a shop, first of all. And like, I always tell them like, hey, if you want a job, be here. Don't like,
Yeah.
no one's going to hire a guy from France if he's
Yeah.
in France. You know what I mean? If you
Yeah.
walk into a shop and go, hey, I'm here, want to I'll sand a board for you, and you can look at it, that's a whole different story. So
Yeah.
I was kind of like, sorry. And then now it's like kind of changed around where I just posted on my Instagram on like my story. I'm all, hey, I'm looking for, I'm going to try to start a glass shop or do something, or like, does someone want to start a glass shop? Like just basically I'm like, I need more boards to get done.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any ideas? I kind of just threw it out there.
Yeah.
And this friend of mine that I've known for years and years, that's like, I call him like a mercenary laminator, like a mercenary glasser. Like he kind of just travels different places and will work. And he's a really good, talented guy.
Who's that?
His name's Chris Culpin. You might know him. Everybody kind of seems to know him.
Yeah, it
And
actually sounds very familiar, Chris.
he's an East Coast guy. He's from Virginia Beach,
Mhm.
and he's a really good surfer. And anyways, he hit me up immediately. He's like, dude, I'll move there right now. You know, he's like, I'm in Florida. He's all, I just have to sell my car. Like literally, he's just like, I'm all, hold on. Like, I don't even have a shop or any idea what's going on. I didn't even have like the space yet. You know, I was just kind of like, I'm gonna manifest this situation.
Yeah.
And so it's working out. That he came right away, but he got work at the places that are already glassing my boards because he knows those guys, and they said, hey, anytime you come to Hawaii, we got work for you. So he showed up. It happened to work out perfectly for his timing of like what was going on in his life. And he was like on a plane 2 weeks later. He's got a studio apartment on the point at Sunset. He's got surfboards. He's set, you know.
Killer.
And so he's just waiting for our shop to be done, and he can start working. And he's a guy that can do completes. He can do start to finish boards, and he's really good with epoxy.
Yeah.
So that's my like kind of cornerstone starting point, and I'll work around that.
Cool. So
it's pretty funny.
You've got labor, more or less. You've got some labor in Chris, and
he's talented. And I've been working with also Jeff Johnston, the shaper.
Yeah.
He's like an incredible shaper, and has so much. He's actually an amazing glasser.
Yeah.
And he has like all this really gnarly epoxy knowledge and like all this crazy. He's just an incredible craftsman.
Yeah.
And he's been actually doing a lot of our team epoxy boards for us. And all of a sudden he's like, I'll glass a couple boards for you, you know, like let's try it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
And his work is just incredible. And his like the resource, like his brain is just so full of knowledge about how to do different things different ways as far as glassing goes. And so I've been working with him, and he has a really small little shop. And so the same thing, I told him like, hey, I'll build this shop and you can come and work in it and do whatever you want, you know, like it's yours to use.
Yeah.
And he knows Chris, so those guys can kind of work together, and he can maybe pass on some of his information to Chris and help him get better at stuff too, which is cool.
Cool. That whole transfer of knowledge amongst craftsmen in the industry is fascinating, right? I mean, Jeff Johnston's a treasure. Like,
he's
almost, it's like his worth is weight in gold, the stuff that he's going to teach.
It blows my mind. Like when I talk to him and he's like, well, you could do this. And he just starts like breaking down ideas. I literally write like on the glassing schedule, like for the order sheets, I just go, you do whatever you want. You know, like I want it to weigh this much. Like we go by weights and stuff, you know, I want it to be like sub 5 pounds and, but not under 4 3/4 pounds. And I want it to not buckle on, you know, the first session or whatever it is, you know, different things for different guys in different places. But, he's just like, he's unbelievable. So it's been really cool learning from him. I've known him forever, but to get to know him more on like the building surfboard level has been really amazing for me. I've been super stoked and lucky. He's an awesome guy.
This is exciting times for you. I mean, it's also, it's not really, it's a new thing for you. It's a new venture. You're basically going to be managing a glass shop on some level.
Well, let's just put it into perspective. Like it's a tiny little glass shop, you know, it's going to have 8 racks, a sanding room. There's hopefully, like, ideally I won't have more than like 3 people working in there.
Yeah.
I want to have a sander, a laminator, and maybe a hot coater. Even if I can, I want the least amount of people there possible.
Yeah, I got you.
And I've had my own glass shops, like my personal glass shops in the past. When I started building boards, I wasn't just a shaper. Like I was a glasser before I ever even shaped a board.
Yeah.
So I can laminate, I can hot coat, I can sand, I can do all that. And so I have a good perspective on that. And I'm kind of excited to actually jump back in there and like laminate, like do my own boards and stuff like that too, which is, I really enjoy it when I'm not doing it like every day for work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty,
tell me about
a nice thing.
Where did you cut your chops laminating and sanding? Somewhere in Santa Barbara, right?
No, I didn't actually. It's funny. I never worked in any kind of surfboard industry in Santa Barbara. I was always, I was around resin, like through my dad. My dad has a sailboat. We've had boats. Or he's had actually the same boat my whole life. But so he was always like working with resin, doing stuff. And then I started learning how to like fix my own dings, just little basic stuff,
Yeah.
And I was always around shapers through Matt Moore
Yeah.
and Hamish Graham in California. But when I came to Hawaii when I was 23 in 92, I had not made any money making. I hadn't done anything in the surfboard industry,
Yeah.
And so I started. Funny enough, I really just started breaking boards. So I was here with like I brought 7 boards with me to Hawaii that Hamish Graham had shaped for me.
Yeah.
And I started breaking boards, and I was totally poor as could be. So I had to fix my own boards, either breaking them or dinging them or whatever. And I found Ed Surfoss at Country Surfboards, which was this incredible spot right across the street from Sunset Beach. Like you could walk down the driveway and you're in the parking lot at sunset. And Ed would sell me resin and let me use his shop, and I could fix my own dings, So I'd go in there and like either it was a buckled board or I broke a lot of boards. I'd even, back that was in the days when you actually fixed a broken board and rewrote it. Nowadays you're just like, thing's done.
Yeah.
So eventually Ed, basically I was going in there so much, Ed's just like, well, you're here, just fix this guy's board too. You're doing a pretty good job on your boards. Literally, like he's like, why don't you just, instead of just paying me, why don't you just fix this and I'll split the money with you,
And
that
frankly,
was
Ed's a legend. I mean, did you get some knowledge transferred from him? Did you get the chance for him to go, hey John, why don't you try it like this? Or did you pick up anything from Ed?
I did over the years for sure. In the beginning, I was pretty reasonably skilled at ding repair just from fixing my own stuff over the years.
Yeah.
Learning how to like use a bigger grinder and different sanding stuff. Definitely, I don't remember exactly how it came about, but it was like I definitely got some tips, And then I had some sort of a affinity for it. I don't know who really has an affinity for fixing dings. It's like kind of the worst job in the industry, where you first you get sloppy with sticky resin, and then you go sanding things and get dusty on that sloppy sticky resin afterwards. It's like you're doing everything in one like 2-hour little binge.
You know what's funny though is that like when I roll into a ding place here in California, if you just show up with a ding, it's like $75 minimum to even look at your small little ding.
It's
like they're
incredible now. No, it's unbelievable. And they've got you over a barrel. They know exactly. They're like, well, what are you going to do? Fix it at home? You're just like, no, here, take my money. I think the guys here now, there's a guy, my friend Dano does this ding repair down at the sugar mill. And he's like, he charges a lot, but at the same time, his boards, he does a good job and he does it in a timely manner. That's like the number one thing in a ding guy. Like, I started working for Ed. I remember one time I was fixing dings for him, and he called me one morning and he's like, hey, I got a customer here. He's looking for his longboard. And I'm like, oh yeah, what's it look like? It was kind of chaos in there. And he's like, oh, it's got like whatever orange stripes and this and that. And I'm like, I just look out in my yard and that thing's in my yard. I've been borrowing it and surfing it, This guy, I was like, that thing had been there for like 6 months or something, and finally I'm like, I'm gonna go longboarding. Like, I'm taking this board. And then ironically, like the one day I had it, the guy shows up to pick it up, after 6 months or whatever it was. And I just remember, I'm like, yeah, I'll be there in a minute. I'll be right there. I think I know where it is. I'll grab it. Just tell him to wait down outside or something. But yeah, it was funny. But so Ed gave me a lot as far as like he let me work in there. I started making money, and you do make pretty good money fixing things if you want to. And yeah, he was awesome. And it was like a little family. He had there was all kinds of different guys. Some of my friends I'm still great friends with to this day are people I met there.
Yeah.
One of the guys that was a sander there when I was there he sands my board still today. He works at this other shop that I was just talking about, and he's like the head sander there. And I see him
Brian?
every day, No, this is a different guy. His name's Charlie.
Oh yeah.
Brian King is another situation. He's another glasser.
Yeah.
But he's too busy right now to even deal with me, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But Ed was cool. So he gave me all he gave me a lot, and then I started finning. I went from ding repair to I learned how to fin and hot coat. That was back when there was glass-ons.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the next step up the ladder, I think, in the glassing world, is like hot coating.
Yeah.
So I was putting in leash plugs, hot coating, putting on fins, glassing fins on, hot coating, and then I never laminated for Ed, but I started laminating like my own boards as that's where I started shaping really slowly. I not for Ed, but just he let me use a shaping room.
Yeah.
And so as my glassing career progressed through just doing my own boards, and then eventually I started working for other people. I worked for Brett Maramoto. I was his laminator for a while.
Yeah.
And then I actually finally got like my own glass shop, like little glass shop up in Pupukea in someone's backyard.
Right.
And did all my own. Like I would shape and glass all my boards. I didn't sand. I'd have a sander.
Yeah.
But I was a laminator and hot coater.
Were you doing other guys' boards too, or just yours?
No, once I got my own shop, I just did all my own boards.
Yeah.
And
as far as shaping though, so you're in Ed's place and you're kind of, in the middle of this kind of hotbed of energy. At some point, you've got a planer in your hand, and somebody must have given you some ideas and some templates, or like who was the guiding light there early on for you?
There was, before I even came over to Hawaii, when I was a kid, since I was about 13 or 14, Matt Moore, who is a really talented shaper from Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Matt was kind of like, he was my guy. I rode for him. Like I was on his team, and I never actually shaped anything there, but I literally watched Matt shape every single surfboard I ever got.
Yeah.
Like I never just like ordered a board and then like went and picked it up.
Yeah.
I would order a board and then I'd go in there when he was doing it and like watch him shape it and talk to him about it and feel it. And he even let me he would let me like template my boards. He'd show me like, here, he'd mark everything, like the dimensions, like the widths and stuff, and then like show me how to template things. And
cool.
And he just taught me a lot. He talked to me a lot about like how boards work and what they do.
Yeah.
And so he was like kind of my starting point as far as like having that deeper interest in surfboards, I think.
Yeah.
And he's just he was a rad guy. Like he was really good to me. He wasn't like a father figure. He's kind of too young. I think he's about 15 years older than me.
Yeah.
But he was definitely like a influence on me, and like I really just loved how his life was. I could see like he was all set up around the ocean, like his whole deal was like he didn't shape all day long. He like went and surfed, and then he went and shaped, and then he went back and surfed again.
He was holding down the top of the point.
Yeah, he was like the top dog at Rincon for sure. Like he was number one at Rincon. Like there was no local at Rincon like above that guy for sure.
Yeah.
But so he really influenced me in that sense, as far as like just like seeing more of like a lifestyle kind of thing. But so when I shaped a board here, I did borrow like tools and a shaping room from Ed and this guy James Turnbull, who was like that was Country Surfboard's main shaper at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a rad character. And
how
just
so?
I don't know, he was just like a cruiser. Like he just did his board, like probably shaped like 1 or 2 boards a day.
Yeah.
Kind of one of those guys that just like paced himself through shaping.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to like be some kind of hot shot or anything, he just wanted to like shape a board and go for a surf. And but I used his shaping room for my first board, I remember. And I think my whole theory was like I just said like, hey, I'll make one board, and if the board's okay, I will keep going. And cool. I don't have any, I always tell people, it's kind of funny, like I'm really like, as far as like drawing or like artistically, I'm kind of not that talented.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, oh, I bet I'm just going to suck at shaping, I wanted to do it, but I'm like, this thing's going to be hideous or whatever. But I'm like, if it's okay, I'll that was like in my head, like if I can ride this board and it feels all right, like I don't even know really what the level was I was expecting one way or the other. But so I shaped one board, and I airbrushed it and glassed it and sanded it and everything, and I rode it, and it worked. So it was like, that was my
where is that board today?
I wish I knew. I actually sold it to one of my friends. Like, it was pretty cool. Like, I actually sold my first board to somebody eventually.
What was the label? Did you have a label back then?
No, there's nothing. It was
Yeah.
just nothing, you know. And it
What
wasn't
about
like
the
today
planer?
where
Did you borrow Jim's planer, or did
I
you?
can't. I don't even remember. It was like I know it was like a Hitachi, one of those green Hitachis.
Yeah.
I never used a skill. I've never shaped with a skill planer. I'm not like the cool shaper guy that did that.
Right.
I'm like enough of a new school hand shaper that I was like only Hitachis.
Yeah.
But I must have borrowed it, or I don't think I bought one soon after that. But anyways,
Yeah.
I just like slowly. So I just started making my own shortboards. But at the
Mhm.
same time, the crucial figure in my life at that point was Jeff Bushman.
Yeah.
And so before I even shaped my first board, I
How
started
so?
getting
You
board.
mean you were getting boards from Jeff, and you
Yeah,
guys were friends.
yeah. I
Right.
had moved over here. And I was sponsored by Hamish Graham when I moved here.
Yeah.
And so he was making my boards, but it just proved to be a weird relationship where like he's in California,
Yeah.
I'm in Hawaii. His business wasn't like booming where he could be like, I'll ship you some boards, you know, like it wasn't, you know, I'm not gonna, and I wasn't the value to him enough to be like, I got to take care of this guy, you know. It was kind of like it was a little difficult.
Yeah.
And so as I started, like I said, I broke all these boards, and so I needed new boards. So I went to Bushman because I had met him through some new friends of mine from Ventura that were actually enemies of mine when I lived in Ventura or lived in Santa Barbara. So I made friends with all these guys.
Davey Miller?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Davey wasn't the. Yeah, it was a group of people that lived with Davey Miller actually.
Yeah.
These guys, I can't even remember how I met Dylan. There's a few guys, but they were living at Off the Wall, the house that's now like the Billabong house at Off the Wall.
Yeah.
All these guys from Ventura had somehow met these two nurses that rented that house, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, they wanted to rent a room or whatever, and pretty soon like those nurses had like 5 surfers living with them in this house. Davey Miller lived downstairs in the studio underneath the house.
Yeah.
And these guys from Oxnard and Ventura all lived together in that house.
Wow.
And I basically lived on the couch at that house. I became friends with these guys. I was living up in Pupakea. I was literally living in a shack in Pupakea, like it was a tool shed in someone's backyard for $200 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
With like I had an
Rats.
extension cord. I had an extension cord that went out to it, and like a mini fridge and like a weird little light.
Was there a floor or was it grass?
Yeah, no, it was all plywood with like a little bit of like screen in this one little area. It was literally like an 8 by 12 shed.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I've slept in one of those over there actually.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm like, $200 a month, I'll take it. But so those guys, I'm like, I live in the shed in Pupakea. Like, would I rather just sleep on a couch at Pipeline? And I just left all my boards there, and I'd wake up and you're like looking at Pipeline, you know. It was pretty epic.
Yeah.
But so I met Bushman through those guys, because Bushman was like somehow he was from the East Coast, but he had moved to Ventura, and he made all the boards for all the Ventura boys.
Yeah.
And so I met him, and then he just was like, yeah, dude, you can use my shaping room. And he was just super cool. Like, he made me so he was making all my guns.
Yeah.
Anything over like 6'8", he was making my boards. And then I just started kind of making all my short boards and like smaller boards.
Yeah.
And he would just guide me through that. Like, hey, here's some rocker measurements. You should try this or do that. Or like, you can use my templates and you can do this. And he was cool.
That's great.
So he was my true like influence in shaping, as far as like physically shaping.
Yeah.
He was the guy that just gave me like that whole, I think of it as like a foundation for everything.
Yeah.
And he made me hand shape. He had a shaping machine. So then I got a job shaping for him, basically.
Right.
But he had a shaping machine. He got one during the time he was working for him, but he wouldn't let me use it. Like he's just like, no, you'd have to keep hand shaping. And
so when you say shaping machine, you mean like obviously you're cutting blanks with the machine, but is there a CAD software program attached to it? Obviously there must be something like that.
Yeah, no, he bought him and Eric Arakawa at the same time, both got DSD machines.
Right.
From Luciano in Brazil.
Yep.
And before that, I was actually working for Bushy before he even got that, and they were getting boards cut on a KKL machine. where they would just have like one file, you know what I mean? And they could
Right.
kind of change, they couldn't actually change anything, but the operators could like make that model at different lengths and widths.
Right.
Then Bushman and Eric both got a DSD machine, each of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with the DSD software, which is terrible, but
Yeah.
at the time it seemed great.
Yeah.
And so they started cutting their own boards, and that was kind of revolutionary to
For
be able
sure.
to have
What year
like,
was that, you think? Like 90
it was,
something?
yeah, it was 96 probably,
Yeah.
or 97. It was pretty, I got here in 92, but I didn't start shaping like until probably 95 or something, 96.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of a blur.
Yeah.
But that was cool. So Bushman just like, he literally was like, what can I do to help you? He was, and
That's so great.
And business wise too, like he would advise me on like, when I started actually getting a little bit of a business, he could kind of point me in the right direction with different stuff. He was doing a lot of boards like through Japan and traveling around the world to shape and stuff. So he really gave me some guidelines in that sense of what to do or what not to do.
So great to have a friend and a mentor like that. That's basically like, how can I help you? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty magical. He's a really good guy, and like we're still really close. And he just is like, he's one of those people that just doesn't he's not like, oh, it's a secret, like you have to earn this. I mean, he made me earn stuff, but like he's real open with things. He wasn't worried, you know what I mean? He wasn't worried like you're gonna take things from me. He was just like, what can I give you?
That's fabulous. That's so
pretty
great.
cool. Yeah, really, I'm really grateful. It was nice.
Well, let me shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
How has the pandemic affected the North Shore community, Jon? Like, has it been a good thing? I imagine it's been a good thing for the surf, but then again, Eric tells me it's super crowded. Like, tell me about the pandemic
I
and the North
Randy.
Shore. Yeah,
I saw Randy a couple of days ago. I was foiling at Sunset Point. He was down there. It was like, it was weird. It's evolved just like everywhere,
Right.
In the very beginning, in like whatever it was in like March,
a year ago.
Yeah, it was more than, in March. And it was killer in a sense. Like we were freaked out, right? I got really crazy. I was like washing the like chip bags from the grocery store and shit, you know what I mean? Like I was like soaping up the it was
the mail
in this. Yeah. My wife is just like, you are a lunatic. My kids, I was just like, no, I'm saving. I'm gonna keep us safe. Like this is insane. Like I'd go and like take my daughter's car to the gas station and get gas for her because I didn't want her like touching shit.
Yeah.
I was insane, and I've since really, really relaxed. But it was pretty funny. But so at that point, people stopped coming here, right? We closed down, like Hawaii closed down. It was amazing. We're like, this is incredible. We don't want anybody coming here.
Yeah.
We have our little closed island, and like, let's keep it as safe as we can. And things were pretty mellow.
And traffic was mellow and everything.
Oh, that changed, dude. We went from like nightmare traffic to just like, no problem. Drive to Haleiwa on a Saturday afternoon and back just to go to the hardware store. No worries. Like that's something that you just never would do around here,
Exactly.
So it changed everything, and the surf got empty. All of a sudden, we're surfing with just our friends or people that we know that live here, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it was pretty amazing for a long time. And then as they've opened back up, it's kind of gone the opposite route where like I'm sure if you're a surfer or even not a surfer, you think of Hawaii, you're like, wow, I can't travel anywhere else in the world. People travel a lot these days, it seems like. And all of a sudden you can't really go out of your country, but you can go to Hawaii. This is like the most exotic place in America. You know what I mean? Basically, or tropical island.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people started coming over here, whether they're surfers or non-surfers. And a lot of people have actually been moving here. Like you see out of state license plates every day. Like
that's what Rarick told me, is that he noticed that there was a bunch of newbies in the water, and they were basically just people that were like, if we have to live from home and we have plenty of money, let's make our home Oahu.
Yeah, why would I live in like wherever when
Connecticut
I can live
or whatever,
on the beach, basically? And a lot of those people, I think, do have quite a bit of money, so they're not like like typically over here, people are kind of like, I don't want to spend a lot on rent. Like people are kind of scratching by a lot.
Yeah.
Not scratching by, but there's, there's
Yeah.
people, just normal people, and it's not
Sure.
just all rich people here. And a lot of the people that have the resources to move here are just like, I'll pay $5,000 for rent for a place that would be, $3,000 or $2,000, or 5 years ago it was $1,500 or whatever.
Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that the
Oh
economy's
yeah,
kind of changed in a bad way because they're kind of pushing the limits of they have so
I don't,
much money that
yeah. There's a lot of like the face of the North Shore. Like if you just drive through the North Shore today, you won't
Mhm.
really see much difference from even 20 years ago. I
Mhm.
mean, it's more modern, obviously, and a lot of like the smaller houses on the beach, especially, are now bigger houses on the beach.
Mhm.
They've been bought,
Uh,
purchased and torn down and replaced or added to or whatever,
mhm.
whether by people that have always lived here or people that have moved here or whatever. But and then I think the biggest difference I see now is like you trip out on like how many little kids there are around here.
Oh,
The like the 1 to 13-year-old
yeah.
demographic is just booming because all these people that have either grown up here or moved here or whatever are all having kids, and it kind of got more crowded. And then these people, I feel like people tend to have more than like 1 or 2 kids around here. Like I see a lot of little flocks of like 3 and 4 kids,
Yeah.
and it's pretty trippy. So there's
That's
just
interesting.
tons of all these little kids everywhere, and just like Randy said, there's all these surfers that like they're not really surfers, they're
Yeah.
just going surfing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
And so, especially like Randy surfs Sunset Point every day, basically,
Yeah.
and even if it's waist high, and that's when like those people are at their best. So you see
Yeah.
those kind of little soft top. I was out with Randy at Sunset Point the other day, and there was two girls and a kid, they're young, on soft tops, and they were all speaking Spanish. And they're like, I don't know where they're from, but that's pretty rare. Like you don't really see like new surfers speaking Spanish on the North Shore.
Right.
Um, so that was pretty interesting. Like I don't know if it wasn't Portuguese, it was definitely Spanish too. So
Right.
it was a trip, and they were
Yeah.
super happy. They're having the best time. And like one of them could totally surf. Two of them were just obviously learning. They're all on like wave storms or whatever,
Yeah.
and they were super stoked. So
Yeah.
it's not like all bad. There's like
Yeah.
good energy with that stuff, but then
Yeah.
there's also like a little bit of a clogged lineup and people freaking whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's
you know,
interesting.
you mentioned these flocks, these young kids that are eventually going to be, you know, 12 and then 16 and then 20. What do you
Yeah.
think about the prospect of becoming a pro surfer for the young up and comers on the North Shore? Does it seem like the pond is growing? The concept of having a career as a pro surfer, do you think it's shrinking, contracting, or do you think it's growing? Are there more opportunities or less opportunities for a 16-year-old that wants to be a pro?
Yeah, it's funny. I have one of my really good friends, PD Johnson. Um, we talk about this stuff a lot because we kind of are in the mix of it all and looking at it all constantly. And we always guys trip out on how much people will put into the potential of their child
Mhm.
becoming that's like a huge group of people that are moving here, is the people that want their kids to be pro surfers.
Oh
That's like
yeah,
a it's crazy, right?
it's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing. And so those people, or not those people, that whole situation, I
Mhm.
always look at it, I'm like, let's just break it down to like how many people are really making a living from pro surfing. And if you're
Exactly.
just taking like, it's literally like in the men's side, it's like
10
I would
people.
call it dozens at most.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20, 30,
It-
like a real living.
yeah.
Guys that
Real
are
living.
killing it,
Yeah.
the guys killing it, there's 10 of them. Guys
Exactly.
that are like, this is incredible. I'm like wealthy from surfing.
Yeah.
There's like 6 to 10.
Yeah.
And then it goes drastically down from those 10 too. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Exactly.
And
It's
and
kind of
then
like the way our society is there's like a 1% and then there's like a shrinking
totally,
middle class.
yeah, the middle class barely exists, and there is no lower class in surfing professionally. There's like the lower class is the guy getting a sticker. You know what I mean? Like I got a pair of trunks and a sticker if I was lucky, or I
Yeah.
got a deal on my trunks and a sticker.
Yeah. Exactly.
So and in the women's, it's even tighter. Like the women's side of it is is even smaller than that. It's shrunken down even lower, and the money is probably pretty good still at the very top, but like the bottom half drops even faster. And so I think it's like, like as a parent, I would never encourage my kid to be a pro surfer in a million years,
I know.
unless they were like phenomenally talented.
Yeah.
And the problem I see is that many parents think that their kid is A, phenomenally talented, or B, can be coached up to be phenomenally talented, or C, can move here and become phenomenally talented. And so I just wish parents would have a little bit, they're setting their kids up for disappointment,
Totally.
And I feel like that's kind of sad.
It's hard to say no when you're a 16-year-old kid and you're like, Dad, I want to be, I want to be Kelly or whatever, it's like,
especially if you're a surfer,
exactly.
Like as a parent, you know what I mean? You're all, that's my dream. I wish I could have just gotten paid to travel around the world and surf. Like maybe you could do it, son or daughter, So I get it. I mean, I can see that too, but I just feel like it's not very realistic. And especially, I think it's become less and less realistic. And like, what's that pathway? Like go to school, do something else or learn some life skills. I feel like those kids sometimes just are coddled a little bit, where the parents put so much into them being a good surfer that they don't really put much into like the rest of their life and like having a balanced life that is going to lead to happiness down the road. And if you don't have that, then like, and then you don't succeed as a pro surfer, or even if you do succeed as a pro surfer and you don't have like a balance of some sort, I just don't think that you're going to have like that much fulfillment in your life,
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult place too for like the 28-year-old surfer that gave it a run and then realizes, you know what, I had a year on the CT and I fell off and I'm kind of like, what do I
am I going to do?
Yeah, it's
I have no life skills.
It's kind of and there's some guys that are pulling it off, but
to be a good surfer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right.
Well, just to be a good surfer takes a lot of time surfing, right? That's how you get good at surfing, is by surfing, not like reading about it or watching videos or I mean, that stuff, you can add to it, but surfing is how you get better. And so if you've spent so much time surfing and not doing other things and not being part of, normal society or whatever, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work, it's kind of funny. I will say, I do have a good friend that I've known forever that he was like one of those very, very fringe pro surfers, where he was just barely squeaking by, and like he had like Japanese sponsors. He didn't even have like American sponsors, and he would do things. I remember he's like, oh, he like came by my house one day. He's like, do you have a razor? I need to shave. I have to go to a meeting. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, they think I'm like 5 years younger than I really am. So I have to shave before I meet with them. But that guy, so I'm all, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you, what's your plan? Or like, what are you thinking? And I'm not really one to give life advice. I was pretty flaky a long ways and still have my flakiness. But he's like, dude, I get to go surfing around the world for free. Like, that's what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't give a shit what was happening next. He's just like, these guys are going to pay for me to like go to the Philippines tomorrow and go to Cloud 9 and get barreled, Yeah. And so for him, that was his, he wasn't looking beyond it.
Yeah.
He was just looking at like, I'm on a free ride right now. Like, I barely am paying my rent, but like, I don't have to work and I surf all day.
Yeah.
And I kind of went like, well, kind of admire that, in a weird,
for sure.
in a weird way. And like, and it's funny.
Especially if you're mid-20s or whatever. I get it. Chase that thing. Keep chasing it.
He was in his early 20s, according to his Japanese sponsors, but he was actually in his late 20s in reality.
He needs hair dye and shit.
Yeah, it was so funny. Pretty classic.
I've always thought that there's, and you are in the middle of it, man, but there are so many great surfers as far as technical skill. And what separates the guys, I'd say right now, the top 4 on the CT, or maybe the top 6 on the CT from the rest of the world, is the mental game, the ability to be, to really have that thing that kind of Kelly has and others have. It's just at that point, it's just like any sport. Look, there's a million great tennis players and golfers and blah, blah, blah. It's the guys that have the mental ability to kind of hunker down.
I agree absolutely. There's like the talented surfers, and then there's the talented surfers that can put it all together. And I think if you listen to stuff, I actually listened. It's funny, like I've known Jon for so long, but even I listened to this podcast he did with Whoop. He did a podcast on Whoop, like the guy that owns Whoop or started, you know what Whoop?
Yeah,
it's like
I do. I have a Whoop myself.
Yeah. So Jon's really been into that.
It's like a Fitbit for the listeners that don't know. It's basically a Fitbit. Yeah.
And it doesn't like track like your motion exactly. It's not like, it's a more of a heart rate thing, and like your it's not like, oh, I took 350 steps in the last hour. It's not that. Anyways, the point is Jon has really used that to track his fitness and like his resting. It has a lot to do with like
recovery, right?
Recovery. Yeah. I love to use that word now when I'm laying around on the couch watching TV. I'm like, hey, honey, I'm getting some recovery right now. Okay. It's like, it sounds way better than just being super lazy. Like, I'm in recovery. Just give me some time here. I'll be done with recovery when this episode's over on TV. But anyways, Jon did a podcast with that guy, and that guy isn't a surfer. And so it's always interesting to hear like a surfer or somebody in that level talk about stuff with people that don't really surf.
Yeah.
Because they get into different aspects. It's not just like, what kind of fins do you have? And you know?
Yeah.
So it's a real interesting, you might want to even listen to it. And it really it gives you a really good picture of like how much Jon uses different like meditation techniques and visualization, and just like how much time he actually does spend beyond just going surfing to be good at surfing, you know?
Yeah.
He spends a lot of time to be good at competing and to be in a good headspace, and like it's pretty cool. I'd listen to it if I was you, or you know, anybody out there listening.
How would we get a hold of it?
I think you could just probably just search like Whoop Jon podcast or something like that. I would guess. It was pretty cool. The guy, I think the guy that started Whoop's probably a pretty smart guy. He sounds pretty interesting, and they work with like gnarly Olympic athletes, and like they work with like the elite athletes across all these different sports. So it was interesting to hear his conversations with Jon, and how that a lot of what Jon is doing is also the same kind of things that all these different real elite athletes in all kinds of different things are doing as well, you know?
Yeah.
And so just to your point, yes, it does take way more than just being a good surfer to be at that very top level, and especially to maintain that level.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty tough.
You know, I got to admit, I was on your website the other day preparing for this, and I watched the podcast where you started to break down some of your boards. And
with Jon.
Yeah. And you
fun.
mentioned at one point that I think it was specific to the Ghost. You mentioned at one point that it was basically a kind of a step up design, and you just cut the nose off more or less.
Yeah.
You didn't move the rocker at all. You just kept the rocker the same. Yeah. And it reminded me of a Brewer story where somebody complained to Dick about something, and Brewer was pissed off and grabbed a saw and just cut the tail off and said, "Here, do you like it now?"
Who was that? Didn't you talk about that recently on a podcast?
I may have. It might have been Lopez.
Cut like a foot off the tail or something crazy.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. Here you go.
Yeah, just kind of went, screw you. But I know there wasn't any of that sort of animosity when you did this. This was specifically
not at all.
You were trying
I wasn't pissed.
No, you were psyching. But what fascinated me is this idea that you didn't move the rocker, because I'm sure Brewer obviously in jest, you know, he wasn't moving the rocker on the tail. So speak to me a little bit about designs. I'm of the opinion, and I know you can't pinpoint which aspect of a surfboard design is the most important, because they all come together as in one unit, you know?
Yeah.
But speak to me a little bit about that Ghost design. I'm fascinated by that board. I'm not sure I have the youth to ride it, you know? Basically, Jon, what I'm saying is I'm looking for a board right now, and I was geeking out on the Ghost. My friend has one. He geeks out on it. But I think I'm just too old for the Ghost. You know, I got to be realistic.
Not at all. I think it's so user friendly. It's almost like that's one of the kind of weirdly like magic things about it. I think is that it's pretty good across the board for everybody. And you just kind of, as far as like like you just ride a little bit bigger one, and you know what I mean? Like you just ride something more sized up for yourself rather than like a little tiny chippy one or something. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nothing. I don't know. It's just I did do exactly that. Like I did chop a board, a step up board that I had that the blank got messed up. It was in Indonesia. Actually, I was in Bali shaping, and we'd shipped these boards. We'd shipped a bunch of blanks. I'd gone there the year before and hand shaped,
Yeah.
and it was a nightmare. Like it was the worst hand shape. Well, actually, the worst hand shaping experience of my life was at the Boardroom show in front of. That freaking cracks me up. I always tell
You
people,
killed it, man. You
that
killed
was the most pressurized hour and a half of shaping in my entire lifetime.
You
Trying
only
to
had
copy a Mark Richards.
You had Mark Richards and Wayne Rich breathing down your neck, not to mention Biolas.
Yeah, dude. Well, that was where I actually met Biolas at that one. That was the first time I met him. But the funny thing is, Wayne Rich was like my coach in that thing. He was like helping me. Luckily, I ran into him in the parking lot on the way in because I was just like, what am I gonna do in here? And he's just like, okay, let me tell you, here's how you do it. Like you let's set your timeline. Like, let's do this. Who's gonna be your corner man? And he's friends with my friend Fred that was there, came down there to see me from Santa Barbara. He's like, Freddie, you're the corner man. You're gonna tell him when he needs to move on to this step. And Wayne was epic, man. I freaking love that guy. But regardless, once you step into that fishbowl and there's like Mark Richards is literally sitting on a stool outside the window, like watching every minute of your hour and a half of shaping. And you're just like, are you freaking joking with me? And I was just like, this is horrible. This is like, I can't believe guys want to do that over and over again.
I am so glad you said yes, because I remember you were like, I don't know. And I'm like, come on, man.
Dude,
Somehow I got you involved.
Heavy. Yeah, no, it was awesome. Like, I'll never forget it, but I definitely won't. That was my last one, right? That was like, okay.
Well, we don't know about that, brother. Come on.
Well, anyways.
So Bali, you had some.
Oh, Bali, yeah. Hey, let me. I gotta go pee.
Yeah.
Really bad. I'll be right back.
Okay. Bye. Yep.
Let's see here.
Yeah, buddy.
Go in. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I was gonna show you here. Let's take a look out. See that?
No, you got to turn on. You've been.
Oh, is my video's not on?
No, you've been on black screen the whole time.
Oh, dude, I would have been. You should have told me.
I just figured you didn't want to go there, but it's no big deal.
I'm fine.
See that little video thing?
I thought I was on there the whole time.
No.
Oh, Rockies.
So good.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel bad. I was like looking at you the whole time. You're just looking at an empty screen.
No, it's fine, dude. Don't worry about it. I never really put the video up. I just used.
I know, but it's nice. I mean, I was like, feel like I'm talking to a normal person instead of like. Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. So Bali. So you're in Bali. Had a horrible hand shaping experience, and this is where the go.
Yeah. So I went to Bali. The first time I ever went down there, my friend down there set me up with a shaping job. He's like, come down and just shape like 20 boards. Like, killer. I flew down to Bali, shaped these 20 boards, but they were like the worst blanks I've ever used. And it was like, it was the sweatiest. It was just terrible. So I'm like, but I love Bali. Like I go to Bali. I've been going to Bali for 15 or 20 years. I love it. So I'm like, I got to figure out how I can keep doing this and like making money in Bali, like shaping boards. Like I went to Bali and got paid, it was killer.
Yeah, right.
So that part was good. So I'm like, hey, next time, since you're already getting the blanks from Australia, the guy that does my boards down there, you're already getting blanks from Australia. Don't those blank companies usually have like access to shaping machines? Let's just get some boards cut. So basically what he did is I put together 60 boards. Like, let's make these 60 boards. And so he had pre-shapes shipped over along with, because there was no shaping machine in Bali then, which there is now. But so I went back the next summer or whatever it was, and I shaped all these boards. It went way better. And but one of the blanks, it was like a 6'4" step up. One of the nose had gotten broken off in shipping. And so you're in Bali, you don't just throw that away. You use it. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, I can make this into something for myself. So I turned it into a 511. I didn't mess with the back part of the board. I just chopped it as far up as I could where it was broken, retemplated it, hand shaped the rocker back into it, and rode it. And I was like, fuck, this thing's insane. I surfed it like pumping ulus, little tiny binging, I got fully barreled on the thing at Padang, and
Yeah.
just super fun. So I had a great time on that board, and it just kind of was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And so
And
I
this
just
was the
kind of
beginnings of the Ghost, right? This was the
basically,
first Ghost, more or less.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I had made another board similar to that here, by hand shaping a board that I, embarrassingly enough, when I templated it,
Yeah.
I had mismeasured the nose and I didn't notice it when I templated it. And then I cut it out and I looked at it and like one side was like a half inch narrower than the other side, or an inch. It was maybe an inch off. Somehow I had like just really farmed it.
Yeah.
And same thing, like, I don't want to waste this blank. Like,
Yeah.
so I reshaped that board into this fat nose board it was only a 5'8", I think. And I rode it at like 8-foot sunset and it worked because it was beefy.
Okay.
And I called it the Bulldog. It was like this stocky little board. And I still have a friend that tries to order Bulldogs from me. He's like, but yeah, so the Ghost, that was, I wouldn't say that was, I mean, that same board, that was a step up model that I still make called the Next Step.
Yep.
And it's evolved over time, but it's like a basic step up board for all around everything. And that's where it kind of began. And then it was like, I started making that design on a computer. So I took that and basically chopped off the nose on the computer. And just like we were talking about the rocker had an apex in the center on the Next Step, but when you chop off the nose, the apex moves forward.
Right. And the other thing that you mentioned is that the rails that now are staying parallel. We've got a wider nose, the wide points forward now, the rocker's forward, but the rails are, it sounded so great when you were describing it. I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's cool. And then the thing with that design too is that when step up boards in general, at least mine, I mean, I would say probably most guys have a lot of rocker in them. They have a lot of curve, right? Yeah. And so that had a lot of tail curve. So there's a lot of curve from that apex of the rocker back to the tail.
Yeah.
And then, but then by cutting off the nose, you're flattening out that front end. So you're changing the whole dynamic of the board by all of a sudden you have this flat end, but you have a pulled in, really curvy tail. So it's still really loose, but it also holds really well because of the pulled in part of it, you know?
And Jon was mentioning it. Now he's got a wider landing area kind of forward where sometimes when, not that we do aerials, but you see the guys, they land up front of the board.
It's a stable platform compared to, and also the thickness is more focused towards the nose of the board, which you'll see guys land with their nose their foot like way up in the nose.
Yeah.
And so on a traditional shortboard that's like super scooped out and like there's barely any foam up there. Yeah. Now you have like actually more foam up there than you do in the tail of the board. Yeah. And so you have this thing that supports you rather than sinking as you land, you know, it's all kind of,
it's the new normal, isn't it? It's the new
normal. It's pretty weird. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty cool. So it's interesting, but I mean, it has its limitations for sure.
Really? How so?
You don't want to go take that out at like waist high trestles or something.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's not going to be too fun.
Well, speaking of that, because that's probably what I'm going to be surfing is basically waist high, crappy California beach breaks, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm going down to Mexico.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
You and every other person in California.
Probably. It's funny you say that because I did hear some other people going, but anyway.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the Gremlin. I actually like the wider outline. I mean, I'm riding fishes around here. So a wider outline tri-fin to me feels like I'm going narrow, you know?
Totally.
Not like I'm surfing Rocky Rights. I'm surfing crappy Del Mar beach break.
Right.
And so I'm thinking the Gremlin
makes a fun board.
Yeah. Tell me about the Gremlin a little bit. Does that make sense for me, you think, if I thin it out?
You know what I would do? Actually, my favorite board for that kind of surf that I've been making lately is called the Astropop.
Really?
And Astropop, which is like, we have a board, you're talking about fish, like I have a board called the Astro, which is like an old school kind of fish, keel fin fish, but I usually make it as a quad now. It's kind of moved over to that. But I took that board and just kind of tried to kind of more high performance it a little bit.
Yes.
I kept the rocker pretty similar, a little bit of touch of added nose rocker. And then I pulled in the tail and put a little wing at like 4 inches up from the tail. So it pulls in quite a bit for the very end of the tail. It's not like a wide, giant, swallowtail.
Right.
But it still has it has a little beak. It's pretty cool looking. And it has a very domed deck. So it has a real refined rail. Like you're just talking about, kind of a less chunk in the rail.
Yeah.
That board is so fun. It's like I ride them a lot here actually still.
Uh-huh.
And as a quad, it's unreal. And it's like a more of a high performance feeling fish.
Yeah.
And I rode my friend. I was in Mexico in September. Went down there with
Yeah.
some friends from Santa Barbara, and I didn't bring one, but my friend Andrew brought. You know Andrew,
Yeah.
that
Arctic Andrew.
owns Arctic. Yeah,
Yeah.
Andrew Jakubowski. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went with Andrew and some other friends, and he brought an Astropop, and I tried it out there, and I was like, we were surfing Barra, and it was so fun. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, I forgot how good these. I came home from that trip and made myself 2 of them.
Right.
I was just like, these things are insane. It was
So,
so fun.
so should I go Astropop? Is that what you're thinking? Over
I
the
think
Gremlin?
so. Just when you started talking about like a thinner rail, because
Yes.
the Gremlin does have like a beefy, it has like that flat deck fatness, and it carries through the nose really a lot. I mean, we can always customize
Well, I like
it.
volume, but
Yeah.
I want that sensitive,
Yeah.
you know.
I think the Astropop as a quad, you like quads?
Well, no, I ride twins and quads. I rode a quad this morning, but I'm
Right.
starting, you know how things are cyclical with your own
Yeah.
surfing? And right now I want that tri-fin vibe. I want
Yeah.
that center fin bang.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a tri-fin.
Yeah. Then you should go the Gremlin. The
Yeah.
Astropop, I've ridden it as a thruster, and it's good, but it still has like flat enough rocker that it feels weird. You know what I mean? It's not such a vertical board. It works because you ride it small enough.
Yeah.
But the Gremlin, I think, is more of a snappy, pockety board than that for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
It's super fun. And that Gremlin is based off the Ghost rocker. Like that rocker, it's the same theory, right? It's like
great.
I've taken in that group of boards, the Gremlin, the Phantom, the Ghost, and then the Shadow. Those are like called the Ghost family.
Yeah.
And those are all based off that rocker and then adjusted to suit different situations and different levels of different sizes of waves and different kind of levels of surfing and stuff too.
Cool.
It's cool. Yeah. The Gremlin's super fun. I love them.
I might reach out to Dan and drive up and see if they've got anything in store. Or maybe Surf Ride or somebody's got one. I'll just buy one, you know.
Yeah. Surf Ride does, but if you talk to Dan, he'll help you out for sure.
Yeah.
Dan's the man.
Look, we were talking about the Boardroom show, and this year we're honoring Pat Rossen in the Icons
That's awesome.
of Film. Do you have any anecdotes about Pat?
I don't like. I've known Pat forever, and I really admire Pat. I think that he was just like, and still is, just he's a phenomenal shaper. His stuff, like I remember when I first moved to Hawaii, like him and Bushman were kind of like, they were for sure the top dogs. Pat probably got a little bit more world famous viewpoint through like Tom Carroll and different guys than Jeff did at that point. But yeah, he's incredible, and his craftsmanship is just unparalleled. It's like he's amazing. One of the things I will say for sure is his tails, his round tails, like a pintail. Pat Rossen isn't a pintail, right? It's a round tail. And that, if you look at my boards, I don't have any pintails either, and I'd say that that's for sure from Pat. I think I even made a template off a 6'8" Rossen in probably 96, a little tail template, you know, like a foot long template just for that last little piece of the tail. And I can't say for sure, but I know that like my 6'8" tail templates and like for little step up boards, if you put it on a Rossen, it probably wouldn't be too far off. Let's put it that way. You know, he definitely influenced. I just really like that. Like some guys have kind of like that pintail. It almost has like a little nipple at the end. Like it's not like a curve coming into it. It's like a pointy tip. Even if it's not super pulled in, it can be like round, but it goes to that little point.
Yeah.
And I always disliked that.
Yeah.
And Pat always had that, like it was a curve coming all the way in to the tail, you know?
Yeah.
Like look at Tom Carroll's pipeline guns. I guarantee they're like round in the tail.
Yeah. Cool.
So I'd say Pat influenced the last 2 inches of my boards for sure to this day.
Right.
Absolutely.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah. And I really like him. He's a good dude.
He is. He's a great guy. Talk to me a little bit real quick about big wave surfboard design, because it seems to me like if we've done a lot of refinement in the boards that we've been talking about here for the last few minutes, you know, like
for sure.
But big wave design, and again, I'm a layperson. You need to tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but it seems like there's a lot of room for change. And part of the reason that there isn't, or one of the things that makes it difficult is that you don't get as much time for your team riders to actually try things out. And oh, by the way, if you screw up, it could be disaster. So you're not necessarily willing to go too crazy in one area or another. And I know you mentioned, and I think it was last year though, Nate's boards had that step deck where it was fuller in the middle of the chest area, and then you step down so that you could sink the rail.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about your big wave board designs, the Padlock, and what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this, just what you just said about it. I used to have that same thinking exactly of like, okay, you got to be really careful. Like, don't deviate too far from the norm. You know, we just want to like get these guys to set their rail, make their bottom turn, make the wave, you know, and then we want to add as much performance as we can, but within these little safe boundaries, you know? And then I think in the past year, what I've had from coming from my guys that ride my boards is like, fuck that. Like, let's get nuts. We'll try whatever. And Nathan Florence is my number one test pilot for big waves. And he'll pack closeouts at Jaws. You know what I mean? Like, that guy is crazy.
Yeah.
And so, and not even really like I'm all, hey, like he comes back from Maui. I'm like, how was it over there? And he's like, it was all right. Like, I got a couple waves. And then I'll see his videos and, you know, a week later, I'm just like, you got a couple waves. Like, you almost died 5 times. And like, what are you talking about? You know? And he's just like so casual about it. So those guys are pushing me. So I have the guys that ride my big wave boards on a consistent basis are Nathan and Jon. Jon sent it this year. That was a brand new board.
Yeah.
Out at that outer reef, as they call it.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a brand new step deck, just like we were just talking about.
Okay.
First time he ever rode it. Like,
yeah.
Like, stickered it up, took it out, and paddled into the biggest waves of the year.
Yeah.
And so he's willing to try some stuff, and he gives me direction. And Nathan's willing to try some stuff and gives me direction too. But they are and then Billy Kemper is another guy. Like, he just to be clear, like, he's sponsored by Town and Country.
Yeah.
He rides Glenn Pang's boards. Glenn makes some insane boards. He comes to me and gets some guns for Jaws, basically, and big waves only. That's it. And I'm happy to make them just to get the feedback and see him riding them.
Yep.
I totally respect Glenn's deal, and he's a great shaper and the whole, you know, everything. Anyways, so those guys, plus there's a couple random guys that get them here and there. And those are like Nathan and Billy are two of the gnarliest guys on earth, you know?
Absolutely.
And so I listen to what they have to say, and they're very good at like trying to explain to me what they do. And what I trip out, I sometimes wish I would record their conversations, let people listen to them, because like Nathan is describing stuff that like happens in this little half a split second on a freaking 900-foot wave.
Yeah.
And like he'd slowed down to this little details where he's like, and then the nose was like touching right here, and like just these crazy details that you just think like you wouldn't even notice, you know, like, aren't you just trying to survive? And they're like, no, we want to pump in the barrel. Like we want to do things like they don't want to just make the wave. They want to like rip the wave, you know?
Those step rails, they're interesting, right? Because just a little quick backstory is that the stand-up paddlers, we were doing that rail because we had to bury the thing, and our little chicken legs couldn't bury a 4-inch rail.
Yeah,
so we
26 inches wide too.
Yeah, well, 26 is narrow. And what I noticed is that when I'm standing in the middle of the thickest part of the board and I'm now tipping my toes side over on the rail, I'm actually losing sensitivity because I'm not on the rail. My weight's actually
it's like a different thing.
Fine line.
Yeah, I think a giant stand-up paddleboard versus like a 21-inch wide gun is a big difference. First of all, but I'm just working on that stuff to figure out. To me, I'm not the first guy by any means. Like, this isn't my idea. Like, guys have been doing it for years.
It's a brewer thing, actually.
Yeah, there's a brewer thing. There's a lot of good gun shapers have been doing different things like that because of the feedback they get from their riders, right? They're like, hey, I want to do. So for me, it's more of like, I want a sensitivity. I want the rail to have less drag. That's all I'm trying to do, is like get the paddle power that you need from that giant board, but when you put it on rail, it doesn't slow down. It goes faster. And that's my only goal with that. And we'll see. Like, those guys haven't ridden them that much. They've tried them, and the feedback's been good, but it's not like overwhelmingly like, we have to do this, you know? So we're just kind of getting there.
Yeah.
The one thing about those boards too, and something that I find really important, is having a flat deck or a concave deck, slightly concave or flat, where that flatness, and it's been overwhelming feedback from Billy, Nathan, John, and even somebody else, I forget who it was that I made. Anyways, that the difference between a dome deck and a flat deck is like a world apart. Mark Healy, those guys. And what I come to realize, I thought it was more like, for me, I started out doing this flatter deck as like a paddling thing, so that you're like more connected to your board when you paddle. You're not like tipping back and forth as you paddle. You're more anchored to it. So you just have more leverage paddling, as your last like 3 strokes into that wave aren't like rocking back and forth. They're like locked in. But what I came to realize is that those guys would all the feedback was, I don't know, I just like this flat deck version of the same board way better. And I think it has to do with, I was actually talking to Jeff Johnston about it, and I was talking to him about that. And he's like, oh yeah, of course. You mean the gas pedal? I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, think about it. Your feet are on a flat or concave surface. Your toes and heels are engaging quicker than if you're on a curved, rolled surface where you tip across it, teeter-totter over it, kind of. He's like, you're instantly engaging. Every little movement is more sensitive because your toes are on a flat thing rather than a curved thing. And I mean, I can't argue with the stuff that they tell me is, and I don't know if that's why they like it, but could be.
Absolutely.
And that was Jeff. I didn't even think about that part of it. I'm like, I don't know. They just like this flat deck better. Yeah. And he's like, this is why. So making like a big wave board just slightly more sensitive, I guess.
What about the nose area on the big wave boards? Because I know there's been a lot of, I mean, obviously they're all worried, especially at Jaws when it's windy, they're all trying to get down the wave face. So we were up on our feet and we're going down and we've got chatter. What's going on?
Yes, we are.
Well,
Me and you, no, I know, I'm just kidding.
You know,
I gotcha.
Yeah. So I imagine, you know, my thing is, well, let's make it like a boat hull, you know, let's make some tons of V in the nose. So the thing just splits the water. Yeah. What's going on with the noses?
I just put a little bit of roll up there, not much. Everything's like, it's so difficult. Like I think the whole balance in surfing always is like paddling versus surfing, right? And it just gets more and more exaggerated the bigger the boards get. So those things, I think a couple things is like having some volume up front helps to maybe give you, once you get some momentum, you have momentum paddling, which is one thing. And then also just having, like, design wise, you want to have something that's a little less grabby up there, but at the same time, you want to maximize your speed. So you want a V is slow, right?
Right.
So you don't want to have the guy pushing, and you tend to put a lot of front foot weight on a gun. Your stance is closer to the middle of the board or even forward. You're driving constantly. I'm thinking of like Jaws a lot when I think of big wave boards these days. And so I'm thinking of these guys getting barreled and pumping or pushing forward. And so the board has to have lift of some sort up there rather than just pure like, you know, V. Right. It may be only incrementally slower, but it's slower. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so there's a balance of where that V goes to back in the board, where their feet are going to be, and all this different stuff. Different surfers are real different. Like Mark Healy stands on the tail of his board, whereas Billy Kemper stands in the middle or the front of his board. You know, Healy, if you watch him on a right, he'll be Tom Carroll style, like back in the very tail and swinging off that. So the boards ride differently for him, you know? Yeah. So, and front side versus backside even, you know, I'm thinking of mostly regular footers going right, getting barreled when I'm trying to make something better in a big wave board, I think.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. There's just a lot to go. And what, the other influence on that stuff is Kai Lenny, who doesn't ride my boards. I've made him a few boards over time, but he doesn't ride my boards. And his influence, like those guys look at Kai Lenny, like, look what Kai Lenny's doing. Look at how his board, like Nathan's like, I swear he paddled from behind the wave and caught it. You know, like he's telling me stuff and I'm like, I think you're a little confused, but you know, I still listen. Yeah. And Kai Lenny's riding these light guns with these weird designs and like channels in the bottom, like just all this weird shit. Yeah. And I keep trying to oh, I'm trying to give up telling him these things, but I keep trying to explain to Nathan and these guys, like, I'm all, dude, Kai Lenny has a different skill set than you guys. He has like a gravity free skill set where he's been kiteboarding and windsurfing and all these things where you're not held by gravity. If you watch Kai Lenny drop into a wave at Jaws, a lot of times his board is almost like fluttering in the wind.
Yeah.
Which is like, to me, would be like the worst case scenario. You're like, no, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
But Kai Lenny lives in that space.
Exactly.
Like that's his normal. He's been fluttering in the wind his whole fucking life. You know what I mean?
That's so
and
true.
so for him, so for him, it's not a new experience. It's just like, this is what it feels like to ride a big wave. And so he can adapt. He can ride. I feel like he can ride different sort of equipment that doesn't necessarily, it wouldn't necessarily suit everyone without that kind of a practice. You know, those guys haven't done that. They haven't windsurfed Jaws and just had the fin of their board floating. That's the only thing touching the water, the tail, the last 6 inches of the board, and that's fine. You know,
that's great insight. That really is. I mean, the fact is, Kai Lenny lives in that space. That's his normal, and that's
he's gravity free.
Yeah.
That's the way I think of it. And those guys are all using gravity and dealing with it, you know, in a different way. And so they'll, like, I just made Nathan an epoxy 9.8 that weighs half as much as his normal boards do. And I'm like, all right, let's go. You try this thing out. Let me know, you know, let's do it. I'm not closed-minded. I'm not telling like, I won't do that for you. Yeah. I'm like, I'll do whatever you guys want. And if you're willing to go ride it, that's great.
Yeah.
I'll watch the videos.
What about the Dark Arts carbon layup for something like Nate's riding? Have you guys?
Yeah, I think we'll try something like that. I know that Kai is using carbon. Like the other thing with Kai is that he lives on Maui, which is one of the most high tech not necessarily surfboards, but board building areas in the world. Yeah, right. Exactly. It's been the headquarters of windsurfing, which has always been light years ahead of surfboards as far as the way you build boards. Yep. But they also have different needs. Like they don't flex. They don't, you know, there's a lot of different things when you build a board, a surfboard versus a windsurfer or whatever.
Yeah.
So Kai's
you
coming
do
from
sense
these guys.
though on Maui that there's this like sailing vibe, like that there's this
for sure.
America's
it's a wind. Like it's the windiest fucking place.
Yeah.
In Hawaii. Yeah. You have to adapt. If you want to have a good time in Maui, you have to be able to use the wind for something, you know, whether it's to do an air on your shortboard or to, you know, kite, wing surf or foil or whatever. But yeah, so I think like I would like to make Nathan a full carbon epoxy EPS board. That's what it was a baby step to do that with this one epoxy. That's a stringered epoxy, normal blank, but light. Yeah. So that's a step towards that. I don't know that. I think Chris Christensen. Yeah. I think he made something for Ian Walsh a while ago, but I don't think I never really saw that.
That really, board was way outside of the.
Yeah,
it was trippy. It was like a paddle board almost.
Yeah,
like
it looked like a paddle board.
Yeah. And we'll see.
And that was all carbon is my point. But I just think that the design was really out there. And maybe that's not like where I want to go. It's just with more of the normal board and try it out. But it has a lot to do with flex and also how to absorb shock. You know, like there's a lot going on out there that is, to me, it's like, why would you want a light board? You know, and Nathan's like, no, I love it. And I started making him some epoxies, EPS, for pipeline. And he's just fucking loves them. Huh. Like, he's like, I'm all, dude, you're just going to break these. He's like, no, what if I made more waves because of them and I didn't break them? I'm like, well, we'll see. And then he's been super stoked on them. So
he knows how to spin it, doesn't he?
Yeah, there's some merit to that, I guess. You know, it just depends. Those guys are at such a different level in the tube and in big waves that like, it's hard to wrap your head around it. Like no matter what you watch or whatever, when you talk to them, those guys are fucking astronauts, dude. Like they're going to Mars and we don't know what Mars is like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When in that video with Jon, he was mentioning that he likes his boards real light. And I was thinking, I've had them too light. They don't go anywhere. Like
totally. There's a level. Yeah.
What do you think that number is poundage wise for like your average surfing, you know, not big waves, but.
Well, like a shortboard.
Yeah.
Like a normal. Well, I'll a light shortboard for like Jon with a 3/4 deck patch and a 4-ounce, full 4 with a 3/4 patch, because that doesn't break. That's like 5 pounds, 8 ounces. And that's not that light. Then if you get down, like he's been riding epoxies that weigh like a pound less than that. 4 pounds, maybe 4 3/4 pounds.
Yeah.
I think 5 pounds is a nice light board. If you picked up a board that weighed 5 pounds, a short board, you would be like, I'm sure your boards are a bit bigger with more volume, so they weigh more anyways. But if you pick up a 30-liter short board that weighs 5 pounds, it's going to be like, wow, this is light.
Yeah.
I think a stock board, that same board with like stock glassing, would probably be closer to 6.5 pounds. Like it's definitely 6 plus. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think there's too light. I think there's different constructions that make things feel differently. Like I don't like the feel of a stringerless blank. Like I don't like regardless of the weight.
Yeah.
It feels like it's missing swing weight or something to me, where I'm used to having wood in the middle of the board that has kind of like a swing to it or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really understand it.
And
I'm not like that level of surfing that it really matters, but like,
it's
feel
an
stuff.
Interesting thing, right? A stringer board, because Skip Fry, at least Skip Fry's been sort of given this quote. I don't know if he said it or not, but he said that a board's at its best 2 weeks before it delaminates.
Oh, really?
Because it's so dampened, and it's like a pair of nice
it's worn
slippers.
in. Yeah. It's nice and worn in. Yeah.
Interesting.
I would, on that note, like the boards I've been making Jon over the last 2 years all have foot concaves shaped into them ahead of time.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like every board, no, I actually do either two ways. I do have I've actually made it where it's just cut into the board and I finish it without having to do anything. But then I find it's almost harder to do that. You have to almost avoid messing up. Whereas I just have a little tool that it's a sanding block that I just put them in. It's a 1.5 foot long, oval on either side of the stringer, basically, where his feet are it's not like your specific heel and toe. It's just like a double concave deck.
Yeah.
And I've been putting those in all his boards for at least 2 years, maybe longer, and he loves it because it feels like a used, like it feels like that worn in board.
Yeah.
From wave one.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of cool. Yeah. And especially with like the carbon boards that he's riding, those things, they do dent up because they're not bulletproof, but like it's nice to have them pre-dented a little bit already.
I thought he was surfing really well on them the few times I've seen him, and there were some videos during COVID.
Absolutely.
Ripping on those things.
Yeah. And he had like a stellar session. That one video, like it was all at Rocky Point, where he's just fucking phenomenal. Yeah. Great surfing. We've been working with those guys for about 2 years to get to that point. The first boards that we got from them didn't feel, they're a little too stiff feeling. There's a lot to it. It's not just like a simple, it's not like, here's your carbon board. Like those guys, Justin Tierney's.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know Justin, or have you ever met Justin?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know Justin.
Oh yeah. He's a legend. Like he's such a good guy. Like I really like him, and he's a really talented dude.
Super talented. I would suggest you probably, as far as carbon layups, he's just put in more time than anyone, as far as he's really gotten his hands dirty to figure it out,
Yeah, for sure. Him and Dan Mann's pretty gnarly.
Oh yeah, well Dan's like his mentor.
He learned from Dan, didn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah. Dan's a legend. I love that guy.
Totally.
But so Justin knows a lot about that kind of stuff. And then it's been pretty cool because it got to the point where like Jon was like, can you ask him about this carbon, or can we do, Jon's obsessed with carbon. He loves things with carbon on them, things carbon, like carbon sailboats, carbon foils, it has carbon bicycles. Like he just loves carbon.
Yeah.
So when he got a carbon surfboard, he's just like, this thing's killer. I love how, and then he's like, and then it didn't quite feel the way he wanted it to. So he's like, we got to figure out how to make this work.
Right.
That was his thinking. It wasn't like, oh, I don't like carbon. I love carbon. So I want to figure out how to make this kind of work. And so he kept like changing different things and asking me like, well, Jon's real smart. He really likes to learn about things.
Yeah.
He's very interested, right? He likes to like gain information and find out like why things work and try to make it better. Mm-hmm. We don't just, it's been pretty cool for me.
That's great.
Anyways, so in the carbon case, it was like, he kept asking me all these questions, and then I'd call Justin and, hey, Justin, John, what about this? And then Justin would tell me something, and I'm calling John. We're playing telephone. I'm in the middle, and I don't even remember what I was supposed to tell anybody. And finally, I'm all, dude, look, John, here's his number. You want to learn about carbon? Just text him, and he'll tell you, and it'll be a lot easier. And I won't mess it up in the middle, and you guys can figure it out. And so they've been talking a lot since then. And it's been cool. So it's helped Justin, I'm sure, a lot. He's probably learned a lot from John, because when you get feedback from somebody like that about what you're building, and then it makes you start thinking about why you're doing it a certain way, and why don't we do it this way, or what can we do to do whatever. Yeah. So that's been really cool, I think, for both of them, because I know John's learned from Justin too, which is great. And then for me, I benefit by just having good surfboards, and I don't have to do the work in that part of it. Right. It's kind of cool, let them figure it out, and then we get something that's good. So that's been fun. And John really likes the boards. They're not for every sort of condition. They're not for every kind of person. It took him a few years to really get comfortable with how they felt and how they're working for him. But you can see his speed and the things that he's doing on those boards is clearly, and we talk about the different boards that are made different ways, and it definitely comes back to, like, in small waves, those boards feel phenomenal for him, which is really cool. It's exciting.
Look,
they're beautiful.
They are. They're so. I've had one, and I have one on order now, so I'm excited about getting another one.
Nice.
Real quick, I got a couple new questions, and then I'll let you go. I know you got your eyes on the. You're a goofy foot, though, aren't you?
Yeah, but I grew up at Rincon, so I love rights.
Oh, that's right.
My backside is my strong point for sure over my front side.
Okay.
There's lefts. There's lefts out there too.
I bet there are. When you look at world champions, John, Kelly Slater, Gabe Medina, Carissa Moore, there are others. Many of them, the ones I've mentioned for sure, all stayed with one shaper for a long period of time. And inversely, there's some CT surfers who've jumped around a bit. And I'm thinking of Taj and Jordy. Yeah. And the world title has been elusive for those guys. Sure. Do you think that this is a valid correlation that I'm making between being, I'll use the term loyal to a shaper versus jumping around, or am I reading too much into this?
I think two things. I think you're right in a lot of senses, especially with the cases that you mentioned. And then also I think depends on the person, like, who's to say if Taj would have been on one guy's boards the whole time, would he have been a world champ or not? Like, if he would have stuck with Nevs or, whatever, I don't know. I think there's a lot of value to be had. Of course, I'm going to say this because it's valuable to me to have John on my boards, right? Like, but just knowing, like, what our relationship is and how things work, and if that's similar to how other shapers are working with their guys, then it's pretty valuable. Because instead of, like, oh, we're trying to figure this out, or we're starting at this low level again and figure this out, we're fine tuning, like, this little tiny percentage constantly, and when you can work in those upper levels like that together, it's pretty good. It makes things just, I think, like, my experience with John is that he just wants to be, he doesn't want to have question marks when he goes and paddles out for a heat. He doesn't want to have question marks when he's at an event. When it comes to just competitive surfing, he wants the work done. Like they say, we've done the work. We're already there. He wants to, like, rock up to that thing and just know, like, we've done the work. I've got the boards. I'm going to go out there and I have to do my part and see what the ocean gives me. And that's that, So it's kind of like a matter of just getting rid of question marks. Yeah. And it's easier to do that if you've worked with somebody over a long term, I think.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It doesn't mean, like, people are always like, John would rip on anything. Yeah, fuck, of course he would. Like, every one of those guys would rip on anything. Like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
Yes, it's absolutely true. It's more like, what do you want to do too as a person? You want to have that relationship with somebody where you can, like, it's more than just, we're not a business. We're, we have a relationship, and there's a lot to that too that can add to your head and your heart and all that stuff, So there's a lot more value than just like, oh, I got a good board.
Yeah.
Like having a friend or someone that can actually
Yeah.
help you out too. I think
Yeah.
I'd say that I see that in all the people that you mentioned,
Yeah.
they're shapers in them.
Mhm.
And yeah, I remember specifically seeing Jordy. I think you might've talked about it recently somewhere. I listened to
I
something.
talked to his dad about it.
Yeah, exactly. I listened to that. Yeah. He's awesome too, huh? He's so classic.
Great.
I love it. I remember he stayed next door, him and Jordy, when Jordy was younger. He stayed at my neighbor's house, and my neighbor's all, dude, I saw G whipping Jordy with a stick today. And I heard him talking about that on there. He made him break a branch off a tree and was hitting him with it. And I was just like, holy shit. I thought that was crazy. And then he's talking about it on your podcast. Like, oh yeah, I had to give him this stick or something.
That was radio gold. When he said that, I was just like, yes.
I know. I heard that. I was like, oh my God, he's actually telling people about that. It wasn't just something he's proud of it. It was so epic. But anyways, I was just saying, I remember like a bunch of events where Jordy would just have 3 different, he'd have 4 Channel Islands and 4 Mayhems and 4 JSs and like running. And there was a heat at Trestles where he changed boards in the middle of the heat. Yeah. And it wasn't like, it's Trestles, dude. It's not like you pal out some wave. You're like, wow, this is way different than I expected. Like Trestles doesn't change that much. And if you know how big it is, you should know what board you're going to ride out there. Yeah. And like to literally be in the middle of a heat and just being like, maybe that other board will help me. I'm going in. Like I was just tripping out when I saw that. Yeah. And I'm stoked that he's like, I think for him to be more focused, I think you can see the value there for sure.
I agree. I'm super stoked and I'm quietly rooting for Jordy to I'd be psyched if he won the world title. I mean, I can say that now that John's out. And
yeah, me too. I can start rooting for other people.
I've specifically, I sent you a text. I'm like, John, let's do a podcast. And you're like, let's talk about other things. And I was like, what does that mean? And
let's not talk about John's knee.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've specifically not gone there. And I
talk about it.
Well,
I don't know much.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know it's just going to rehab and try to get better. I mean,
totally. The cool thing I'll say in this space is that regarding that stuff is like, he's really good at rehabbing. Yeah. He's not like, the only benefit of having had multiple injuries is that you know how to take care of them and you know how to get through them as quickly as possible. And you know what works for you. Yeah. So I'm super stoked for him in that sense, where I feel like he's not, in a space where he's like scared or worried about what's happening. He's like, this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen. This, I'm going to take care of it. These are the people that are going to help me, and I'm going to get forward and move past this. And that's that,
I love it. He's in the solution. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, totally. Anytime I've been with him a few times where he gets hurt and like, he's healing the next day. You know what I mean? He's like, he's getting better. He's not like, I'm injured. Like I'd just be like, oh me, poor me. He's already like, here's what I'm doing to get better now. Like that next, literally right away, which is pretty cool.
That's incredible. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty radical.
Michael Ho, 64 years old, gets the sickest backdoor barrel, puts his hands behind his back. Is that your daughter?
Yeah, Lula. That's my dog's getting old. She barks at nothing.
Oh yeah, no,
there might be somebody coming by.
Oh yeah.
There it is. Cole Rossen walking through the yard. What's up, buddy? Yeah, Jack. I'm doing a podcast right now. I'm podcasting. No.
I'll be done in a minute.
Have fun out there. Yeah, that's Cole Rothman. He's my neighbor.
Oh, sweet.
He lives one house behind me, so he comes through my yard and uses a lot of my hot water in my outdoor shower every day.
Okay, we'll just leave it there.
Michael Hill.
Oh, dude, I'm blown away. I spoke about this. I mean, I think this is the most underreported story in surfing this year, is that a 64-year-old man is getting shacked out of his brain at massive, solid 6 to 8 foot backdoor pipe.
Yeah.
I mean, mentally deep and spit upon. And, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I wonder if Pyzel surfs gas chambers, or I'm sure you're probably not surfing pipe at your age.
No, I quit that a long time ago.
Yeah, and that's my point. Like,
I got really hurt at pipeline, and it kind of got me scared.
Isn't it incredible, Michael Ho, what he's doing at age 64? I think it like deserves some sort of note. People should take note.
Here's what I'll say on that. is, first of all, yes, you're 1,000% right. That guy is a fucking legend.
Yeah.
And not only is he a legend, but like, he is a great, I love Michael Ho. And I don't know anybody who doesn't love Michael Ho.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been like traveling all around the world and run into him. And I just like, just had the best times with him in all these different countries. And I see him surfing literally almost every single day that I surf. I'll see him somewhere. He surfs all the time.
Yeah.
And he rips. And he's like riding shortboards. He's like, oh, I borrowed this from Coco. He's like riding Coco's board or Mason's board, or you know what I mean? He only rides 4 fins. He rarely wears a leash. Yeah. Like he is, you had some leash talks lately. Mike Ho, leash free almost all the time. But yeah, he's an absolute legend. And the one thing I love that people don't realize is when Michael Ho is at Pipeline, there's nobody out. Imagine that, dude. He paddles out to Pipeline. There's 0 people that are gonna paddle for a wave that Michael Ho wants. He can have absolutely any fucking wave at any time, always, 100%. Pipeline it's an empty wave to him.
That is so great.
I love that. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. He's a 64-year-old paddling out to empty Pipeline whenever he wants.
It's mind blowing. I mean, I'm struggling to get to my feet at 56, trying to order, thick fat boards, and this guy is just charging.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's awesome. I love it, and I love the respect that he's given, and like everybody's just like stoked to see him get a wave ever, and then just like everyone's just like, oh, Mike, you don't even look at Mike's waves. He paddles for a wave, you just get out of the way.
And he's so under the radar too. It's not like the kind of guy that's like looking for. He's
not beating his chest. He's just a surfer. That guy's a surf rat. Like he is just a surf rat.
I love it.
It's pretty epic. It's
all right,
awesome.
last question for you, bud, and then I'll let you go. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, no worries.
Boardroom show, the Icons of Foam from Hawaii. In the past, we've honored Brewer, we've honored Lopez, we've honored Ben Ipa. We're honoring Pat Rossen this year. Can you give me a short list of shapers, and in some regards, maybe you already have, short list of shapers that you think deserve to be honored from the state of Hawaii?
Yeah, I think, God, it's so gnarly. There's so many good guys here. And it's crazy. There's so many good shapers. The North Shore it's kind of slowing down with the amount of guys it seems like around here now, but like there's so many good shapers. It's nuts. But the top of my list would be Glenn Pang, Dennis Pang, no relation, those two. Pat Rossen, Dick Brewer, obviously.
We did Brewer.
Dick Brewer's, Dennis and Glenn are both amazing. And then like there's some town guys that are just insane too. Like there's so many guys. Yeah. But those are my 2 top guys, I would say, from that make boards for the North Shore a lot. Yeah. Glenn Pang has made boards for so many people. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And I mean, over the years, that guy's been incredible. Jeff Johnston is fucking incredible. Like that guy was making, when he was working for Town and Country, where he's like making Johnny Boy's boards when Johnny Boy was like the man at Pipeline, and
he's making Brian Kailana's boards.
Yeah. All these, he's made stuff through so 80s. Many generations. Yeah. And I would say that guy is just unbelievable, Yeah. There's a guy here on the North Shore, Brett Maramoto, who's like my age, who's we're too young to be in that any of those groups, but like of the younger guys, and I'm freaking old, but there's not really like that many guys underneath our age. It's kind of weird. But Brett is a really good shaper, super great guy too, unreal. He made tons of boards. Derek Ho won the Pipe Masters to win the world title, first Hawaiian to win the world title on Brett's boards in 1993. Which is like, I didn't even shape then. You know what I mean? And he's like, he was winning, guys were winning world titles on his boards. He worked for Eric Arakawa, of course. Yeah. Eric. Unbelievable. Insane. Yeah. Like talented beyond belief, and just meticulous. Super. But that's where Brett worked for Eric and got his skills from. Yeah. Brett made boards for Michael and Derek under the Perfect Lines label for a bunch of years in the early 90s, which was their label that they started for. I think they mostly sold them in Japan. Mm-hmm. He's a super talented guy. There's just and then there's like all these longboard shapers, you know, the guys that just are like more just longboard kind of guys and different things. But I'd say Eric,
Yeah.
Eric's gnarly.
Yeah.
Jeff Johnston, the two Pangs.
Yeah.
Those guys are both insane. And Rossen, obviously.
Yeah. That's a good list. It's a good list for me to dwell
on. Oh, Bushman. I don't think of him as Hawaiian shaper really somehow, but Bushman, of course, is gnarly.
Yeah.
Bushman would make like boards for Ross Clark Jones the night before the Eddie, and he would fucking win. You know what I mean? Like he would shape it the day before and like force it. His glasser would drop it off like at the bay at 6 a.m, and Ross would paddle out and like he won the Eddie on that board. You know, like crazy shit. He was making step railed. I remember him making a step railed board, concave deck step railed board for Ross in like 95 probably.
Killer.
So yeah, he's gnarly. He made a lot of boards for Twiggy. He's made a lot of Twiggy's boards, big wave boards.
Yeah.
Bushman's a legend too.
For sure. He is. No, there's no
Poncho was on tour on Bushman's.
Yeah.
Pretty nuts.
Bushman.
Yeah.
Right, look, Jon Pyzel, dude, thank you so much for spending the morning with me. And
thanks, Scott.
And I hope
I like we talked about some different stuff. It was good.
Yeah, I stayed away from the whole JJF thing on purpose.
Yeah, I like it.
I didn't bring him up.
Appreciate
In fact,
it.
you brought him up. I made note of it.
It's hard not to. Oh yeah. In the show notes, you'll see John brings up JJ. Okay.
All right, boss. Look,
All right.
Talk to you soon. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No worries. I appreciate it too. And have a great day.
Okay, boss.
Hopefully you wait, one last question for you.
Yeah, buddy.
When was your last surf?
This morning.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I surfed on a little Wayne Rich 5.9 quad this morning.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, probably similar in some ways to the Astropop, I think maybe.
Oh, yeah?
I'm just kind of riffing, but yeah.
Wayne's the man, huh?
He's a classic, dude.
I love that guy.